all right. Looking forward. I've never done any interviews before comedy. I've done a lot of interviews about, other work-related things, but yeah, for comedy, it's going to be the first time. So let's see.
Okay, so I'm gonna jump sort of straight into it. I've seen a bit of your material, and I mean, I'm not a person who laughs out loud, but your Stevie Wonder joke that fucking got me.
I don't have a lot of materials up there. Yeah, I think I have like three, four clips, and I think yeah, that's one of those jokes. Yeah.
It was absolutely brilliant. So a bit of context: Thomas is also not only is he a funny guy, he's you're a blind comedian.
Yeah, I'm totally a blind comedian, and yeah, I think that's what I find really interesting. Just going up on the stage as a blind person. For a few seconds, people don't know what they are looking at. A lot of people are often, puzzled. What is he blind? Is he not blind? And I think that's one of the reasons why I started doing sketches about blindness to open up the show. For example, the sketch you show, I mean, the joke you saw about Stevie Wonder. That's one of the jokes I wrote, to introduce myself, saying that I'm blind. So, otherwise, people are wondering the whole show: is he blind? Is he not blind? Often that gets away, from them concentrating on my jokes. So that's why I decided I need to do a blind joke first, make people very clear I'm blind.
It's weird because would they would that try and make like because I know like a lot of the stage they try and make eye contact with the comedian. So I'd be quite curious to see if they are still just staring at the stage or have they got freelance to look around. Uh, because you don't
I
always have
think
a stick. Oh,
yeah, yeah. I have a cane with me whenever I go onto the stage. I have this very, very long cane. So I often also, make joke about the cane. I think like a couple of days ago, I did a show and I had this new long cane I'm really proud of. Very light, very happy to have it. Quite expensive, by the way. So sometimes I make joke about it so that people. I think there are different jokes I kind of use as a way to introduce myself, saying that I'm blind. So one of the joke is about me having a long white cane, saying that I tell them, in case you're wondering what this is, it's my penis. Yes, I may be black or brown or yellow, but I have a white penis.
well, I
So
wouldn't
yeah,
have, I
I,
would have gone for that color if I had my perfect world. But yeah,
yeah, yeah. I mean, I always make sure that people are really aware, clear I'm blind, and because it's all the other reason is also there are not many so-called visibly disabled or blind people on the stage. It's important people are aware that you are blind, and it's okay for everybody to go onto the stage. At the end of the day, it's not about being disabled or non-disabled. It's about being good at what you do, and yeah, I hope I'm getting good at what I'm doing. So I think that's the most important thing as a comedian. So it's important people know who you are, but that's not really, when you're up on the stage, you're up there really to tell jokes.
but at the end of the day, yeah, if you're funny, you're funny. But it does
Exactly.
give you a avenue into other material that other people can't do.
Yeah, no,
Uh,
absolutely. Nice angle, to bring jokes or write jokes about things that normally you don't get to hear. A lot of blind jokes, like you saw the one you mentioned I have on my YouTube, a blind joke. A lot of people tell blind jokes to niche audience. But what I'm doing is that, I want to write the jokes about disability blindness to mainstream audience. And that's what I mostly do because so far I haven't done any shows for so-called disabled people or blind people. All my blind jokes I write for sighted people, and they find it funny. So I think that's the whole point. We want to make any niche topic a part of the mainstream topic of comedy. So I think that's something I find really interesting, and also as a so-called blind person, I find that interesting angle to take comedy to actually.
so, what sort of difficulties do you reckon you've got in comparison to normal comedians, like booking events, going to the venues? I'm assuming like I think it's been like orchestrated now to like make this easier.
Yeah. So I think it depends where you're, right? For example, in London, maybe in UK or US, comedy culture has been there for a long time. But I'm based in, Belgium, Brussels. Though we
Okay,
have
cool.
yeah, so we have English. I mean, the comedy culture here, but it's more like Flemish or French. English comedy is, something that we are developing, and then, and there are not many so-called blind or disabled people on the stage or in the comedy scene. So some of the challenges is, you just being there and showing your face. And I mean, first few times, I mean, it could be quite weird, even for comedians, because they're not used to interacting with, so-called disabled or blind comedians.
Mm.
So a lot of times you have to make the effort to convince them, all right, give me a chance, to tell a joke on the stage. A lot of times you go out and talk to these people. They're not used to it. They're kind of uncomfortable. So as a blind person, I often have to take the initiative saying that, all right, guys, I'm here. Let's talk, let's have a conversation. I have to open up, that kind of communication. But at the end of the day, I also have to prove that, I'm not just a blind person who's trying to do comedy, but I'm good at it. At the end of the day, you open up you take the initiative, but you also prove to them that you're good at. So once they get to see that, then they'll begin to realize, you're part of the comedy scene and comedy culture. But this is something that you really have to make effort, to build inroads into. So it doesn't come naturally or easily. So it's easier for sighted people to go in there, but for so-called disabled people, you might have to make a lot more, efforts.
How would you read a room?
How do I read the room? So one of the ways to read the room is, because often you go in a lineup with 5, 6 comedians, sometimes 10 comedians. First few comedians, they will perform and you see how the audience are reacting. And, that gives you an idea about the audience, what kind of mood they're into. And obviously the context, right? If you're in a bar, they are going to be drinking. They'll be quite rowdy. And also that depends what time, right? If it's early in the evening, even in a bar, people are just starting. They're still quiet. But late in the evening, night, they are more rowdy. So yeah, you have to be really aware of the context. And then obviously as a comedian, even if the crowd is quiet, not open, but when you go up there on the stage, obviously you have to be confident. You have to be comfortable with yourself and talk to them, be in your own skin. If they like you, they like you. If they don't, not much you can do. I mean, the only thing you can do is, be your natural self and tell the best jokes that you have.
Okay. Yeah. And how long have you been doing comedy for?
So it's going to be 2 years in the summer, September. Actually, I started in 2023, September in the Netherlands, in Rotterdam. And so this September is going to be my second anniversary. And yeah, so I'm going to be 2 years. And it's been a journey.
Yes. But yeah, I mean, and the beautiful thing about doing this is that every single person's got a different journey, a different story. We're being a comic's quite weird because you've sort of got this camaraderie with all your fellow comedians. You want everyone to do well, but also you are in it for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, there can be camaraderie, but I think it depends on your personality and also how long are you in the comedy scene, because me being, as you can see, I mean, I look Asian. I'm like half Indian, half Belgian. With my looks and also as a blind comedian and as a new comedian, it takes a while, to get into that kind of community of comedians where you have comradeship. It takes a while, actually. It doesn't happen naturally. I suppose it might happen to some people, maybe if you're sighted, able to make eye contacts, because a lot of, is based on eye contacts for sighted people. For a blind person, if you don't, look into someone's eyes and make eye contact, it takes a while. You have to make different ways of, initiating conversation and that kind of thing. And it takes a while to get into the, niche of comedians that have developed this kind of relationship for a while. So it takes a while. And as an outsider, as a blind disabled comedian, it takes actually a lot more effort to get into that kind of comradeship of comedians. So far, it's not easy. But again, that's not really my thing. I'm not here really to. I mean, I would love to make friends, that kind of thing. It's nice, But I don't care too much. If they accept me, they do. I mean, if they don't, I don't care too much. At the end of the day, I'm there to, tell a joke and be as good as I can. That's the main thing.
Exactly. And also, I guess one I know I'm trying to do because there's not. Obviously, I'm fully grateful for being able to see. So I'm not saying there's many benefits on reverse, but at least you haven't got to deal with fake people's pretty privilege. Being blind, you got straight through the bullshit and sort of see someone as they are. Not literally, I meant so, but like, yeah.
Yeah, I know. I mean, there are a lot of privilege, as a so-called non-disabled people, comedians or sighted comedians. I mean, things come quite naturally to them, like eye contact, starting conversation with the audience or with other comedians, And even the audience, after you perform, they hesitate. They don't know how to approach you. For the first time they're interacting with a blind comedian, they don't know how to approach you. So yeah, so that also, it's not just about among the comedians. As a blind person, as a blind comedian, it's difficult to kind of initiate conversation. A lot of the time you take the responsibility. And the same thing happens with a lot of, audience. Some audience would come up to you and tell you, but other audience, they kind of hesitate. They don't know how to approach you. So, so I think these kind of awkward interactions among comedians and also with the audience, I think it will go away. The more and more comedians like me come up on the stage in the mainstream scene, it becomes easier to open up that kind of conversation. But for the moment, it's still, quite a difficult road to climb. But at the end of the day, I say, I know there are not many blind or disabled comedians. I have to take the responsibility, and I do it. So I'm very aware and very conscious that I have to take responsibility. I expect, for people to approach me. I take the responsibility to approach them. So I think that's so far been my attitude.
Okay, yeah, I will, because you've got to be approachable, regardless of whatever's going on. If you're a cunt, you're a cunt.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line for me. So okay, so we've been doing it for about 2 years. What would you say so far has been your best moment on stage? And my favourite question: what was the worst time you've bombed?
Well, I think as a new comedian, you're still, figuring out what is the natural way of delivery, how you want to deliver your comic, jokes, and what kind of style is yours. I mean, you're still figuring out. So there has never been really a show where I'm totally bummed. It's always a mixed bag. Some jokes work, some don't. Because whenever I do like a 5 minutes or 6, 7, 8 minutes or 10 minutes, a lot of times I'm still, testing out new materials. Some jokes would work, some don't. So, I mean, there has never really been a night where I totally bummed or totally succeeded. I think, but there are few shows, obviously, now more and more as you get better with more experience. Shows get really, you're improving and you see, that shows are going quite well. But so it's always a mixed bag, right? So I mean, some jokes work, some don't. But of course, you get disappointed when they don't work. But I think that's one of the things I find really interesting in comedy is that you have to learn to deal with failures and how to handle your emotion. Because when you fail, you want to crawl into a hole and die. But later, you have to manage that kind of emotion, right? So you can't stay in the hole. You have to get out of the hole and do the same thing over and over and over again. So I think that's something that I find incredibly interesting in comedy is that you have to learn to regulate your emotion. Instead of going to the therapist, I have to manage my own emotions. And I think that's something that kind of comedy I find really interesting. It teaches you how to, deal with your failures, how to take failure as a way to not, stay there, but to use failure as a stepping stone to do better. So I think so far that has been the journey of failure and success in shows.
Okay. I like that. And what well, no, that was quite a deep one. I was quite overcome by that. Yeah, because when I do a show, like say like a gong show, doing your 5 10s, I always like to go on the second half because I was like, right, then I'm here for the whole show now, and I try and enjoy it. I've done my first ever show was a gong show. Do they do gong shows?
Oh yeah, there are gong shows, there are roasts. But I, as a comedian, I decided, I have a certain style of comedy. I am not interested in roasting people. And I mean, people are allowed to roast me. I don't care about it, but I don't want to. That's not really my style, and I don't want to do any gong kind of style. I'll write my own jokes, my scripts, and I'm just going to do straight up comedy. So I haven't really participated in like roasts or gongs. I don't think I will ever participate in those kind of shows. That's not really my style, not really my thing. But in terms of the going up on the stage, yeah, I mean sometimes it's easier to go up first. Sometimes it's better to go up in the middle, sometimes at the end. But I think at this point of time, you begin to realize that, you have to be able to perform well, whether you go first, whether you are the first comedian in the lineup or you're somewhere in the middle or somewhere you are doing it at the end. You have to be able to perform. You have to have good material and perform well in all those kind of time. Yeah, period. So you can't, a lot of people want to go up first because it's easier. A lot of people are really afraid of going up first, and that kind of thing. But I think for me, as a, process, as a journey of growing comedians, yeah, so I find it really interesting to perform, in all the stages, whether it's beginning, mid, or end. So I think you have to become comfortable in performing on all those kind of, spots and stuff.
Yeah, just do every single one. And is it like, regardless where you are, you want to be the best one in the room that night? If it's 3 minutes, 5 minutes, you want to make sure
Yeah.
you're the best.
Yeah, I mean, I don't care. I mean, I don't think, I don't I think that's a very competitive attitude. I don't have that kind of thing. People are best in whatever they do. I think I don't have to think about, I'm better than you or better than any other comic. I think I have to be best of, what I can and what style, what, joke I do. It has to be best according to my own ability. I often don't compare myself with other comedians because I do a different brand of comedy. They do a different brand of comedy. So I really don't compare my style and their style. And I'm happy, if they're able to make other people laugh with their own style. And I'm happy to, do it in my own way. So I don't really have that kind of competitive attitude saying like I'm better than you or you're better than me. As long as you are doing your, own style and I'm doing my own style, I think that's all that really matters.
And how would you describe your style?
Ooh, my style, I think it's very something I would go interpretational comedy. I do a lot of observations of whatever's going on in the world, and I interpret that from an angle that I think is funny. That's a very unique, quirky style that I have. So yeah, and a lot of comedians today they do the storytelling. They want to tell a story, that kind of thing. I mean, I also do some of those things, but that's not really my primary thing. My comedy is often really about observing and then use the observation for interesting way of interpreting that and then present that interpretation to the audience, and that's what really constitutes my jokes.
Okay. And being from Belgium, I this is gonna be my favorite, most positive stereotype. A lot of people from Belgium speak a lot of languages.
Yeah, I mean, Belgium has, primary languages that we have official, I mean, languages are French, Dutch, and German. Most people might not know that, we have also German. There's a pocket of people who speak German. It's an official language. So, yeah, most people speak more than, two languages in Belgium. But yeah, since I'm also half Indian, I speak more than, two, three languages. So.
Yeah, so yeah, Indian culture as well is known for yeah, knowing a lot of languages as
Exactly.
well. Does your comedy translate in all different languages?
Yeah, so I think that's one of the goals of me doing a comedy or writing jokes or writing scripts. I often don't write jokes to be funny in a specific context. I can write a joke that is funny for Dutch speaking people here or in the city, taking the local context and makes it very funny. So I don't tend to do that. I tend to write jokes that are globally funny. I can tell the same joke, that I tell here in my city. I can tell the same joke in London and in New Delhi and New York. They will still be funny because I write jokes that are globally relatable for people. That most people might have kind of access to that kind of context. So I make the effort as a comedian. I want to go international. The goal is to go international. And if you want to go international, you have to write jokes that are understandable, relatable by people around the world. And I think that's one of the efforts, that I consciously make. I don't want to write local jokes. I want to write global jokes. And that's what I do.
Okay. So saying you want to take it internationally and get bigger, where would you sort of see yourself in 5 to 10 years?
Oh, I think I want to get as good as I can and write jokes, funny jokes, and be able to perform anywhere in the world. So I think that's the goal. Everywhere in the world, write good enough materials that people want to hear in London, in New York, in New Delhi, or Johannesburg. So the goal is quite simple: be funny and be able to make people laugh around the world, and want people to, make them want to invite you to come to their city or country and make them laugh. So I think that's basically the thing. Yeah. So beyond that, I don't think I have very concrete goals of where I want to be. I think the goal is really to be funny, and be able to make people around the world laugh and think you're funny.
Okay, good. And obviously, with being a comedian, we do go into sometimes conversations that are a bit taboo. We do walk the fine line sometimes. Do you think there's any jokes or comedy out there that that shouldn't be joked about, or do you think everything's sort of on the table?
I think everything is on the table, but it depends how you make jokes of, sensitive topics. So I think it's not really about the topic; it's how you make jokes of those sensitive topics. I mean, but I think you learn as a comedian. Initially, I think I also remember making jokes about sensitive topics, but in a really horrible way. So I think for me as a comedian, you can make joke about everything, but it's how you tell jokes about those sensitive topics that's what matters. If you're able to do it properly, I don't think it's really a problem. But if you're not able to, tell jokes about sensitive topics smartly, then obviously it's a problem. But again, it's a double sword thing. You can't always dictate what people hear. But I think as a comedian, the best you can do is, if you want to tell jokes about sensitive topics, is be smart about it, in a way that people understand it's a joke, and give it an interesting angle, a new angle to the topic. And instead of adding something that is more painful to something that is more painful, I mean, that's already painful. But I think it's really about taking the topic into a different angle. For example, I have a joke about, the death of North Korean leader's father, Kim Jong-un, the North Korean leader, Kim Jong. So the joke goes like this. Do you know why the father of Kim Jong-un died a few years ago? It's a sensitive topic, right? So the joke goes, do you know why the father of Kim Jong-un, do you know why Kim Jong-un's father died a few years ago? Well, Kim Jong-un's father died a few years ago because he was Kim Jong-il. Very, very Kim Jong-il. So that's a joke. I mean, because his name was, in case you didn't know the reference, Kim Jong-un's father was Kim. Yeah, his name was Kim Jong-il. Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant.
So that's the thing, it's knowing how to write jokes about sensitive topics. And yeah,
would anyone who's not in North South Korea get pissed off about that?
So far, no. So I don't know about performing this in North Korea, but yeah, outside South Korea, North Korea, South Korea, nobody has been pissed about that.
I mean, I tried one on Wednesday and 2 days ago, and it went awful. I thought I'd test it, and it was a shit room. So I thought, you know what? No, so the room was great, but it was just all other comedians. So it wasn't getting any laughs. And I said, "Oh, call me around because I've just bombed." And the look of disgust almost. But yeah, from light-hearted. But yeah, I completely agree with you, Thomas. You can joke about anything as long as it comes from a place of laughter. If you say something to be mean, for the sake of it, then you're just being a prick. But anything can be laughed at as long as it comes from a funny place.
Exactly, from a good place, with a good intention, and if you're able to, tell it in a nice way, or a smart way. So I think a lot of those factors do matter. I think that's something that. Yeah, go ahead.
So, what gave you the balls the first time to get onto the stage and attempt stand-up? Because a lot of people say, "Oh, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it." We all said that until we said, "You know what? Fuck it, we're doing it."
I mean, for me, it was out of the blue because I don't really watch comedy. I don't even, I'm not really a pop culture guy. I don't even watch movies and stuff. It's not because I'm blind. It's just that it's not my thing. I'm not into pop culture, that kind of thing. I don't even watch comedy, or I don't know many comedians. The only one I used to know was George Carlin. He was the only comedian I watched a bit as a teenager, but I never thought about doing comedy. And even as a blind kid, I never thought that's something that you can do as a blind person. So, you can even dream of doing. For sighted persons, so-called non-disabled people, have a lot of dreams, that are open, at least open for you to think that is a possibility, or even to dream. To be a comedian, to think about becoming a comedian as a blind kid. It's unthinkable. You can't even dream because you don't know anybody who's doing it, and you don't even know the possibilities. So, becoming a comedian or making it a career, it just happened out of the blue, like 2 years ago. I mean, I said, one day I woke up and I said, I want to do something interesting, something different. And then I said, why not do stand-up comedy? And that's how it all started, actually. So I don't really have a long kind of process of wanting or wishing to be funny, go onto the stage and do comedy.
There's a bit of Asian Martin Luther King on that speech going on a little bit. So you got me going there a little bit. That was quite good. I liked that. So So you've been in about 3 years. If you what advice would you have given yourself now? If you could quickly go back 3 years, what advice would you give yourself starting out?
Yeah, I think as a kid, I would say, yeah, I mean, you're allowed to, dream. As a, so-called blind disabled person, you can never think of yourself as becoming an actor, actor or actress, a movie star or a comedian on the stage. And you can never ever think of yourself like that. So I think if I go back in time, then, I would have these dreams as a kid. Okay, maybe it's a possibility for me to be a movie star, to be a pop star, to be a singer, to be a comedian. So I think, those kind of possibility to dream
Okay.
would, yeah, yeah, would be something that I would give as a kid, because then I would kind of allow me to maybe even think about all, different opportunities that might be possible for me to pursue. But, as a kid, as a blind, disabled kid, you often don't have these kind of possibility of dreams.
Okay.
Even
And
dreams are limited dreams, right? Some people are not even allowed to dream. So I think that's one of the thing about being a disabled person. You're not even allowed to dream sometimes to be, this or that. So that's one of the limitations, so-called blind disabled person you have.
would
Dreams are
hate to
limited.
blame is. So say somebody's just starting out in the comedy world, they're thinking of doing their first set, or they've just done their first set. What advice would you give to them?
Well, just go onto the stage, and I think it's already quite a thing to go onto the stage and tell jokes. So I think when you go on the stage, you will learn about yourself a lot. Be open to learning. Be open to failures, and let the failures teach you not to fail. So yeah, I think openness is, I think, something that I would really advise. Be open to success, and open to failures, and be open to learning every day, every time you go out and perform. So openness, I think, most important. Openness to and willingness to learn. I think that's all you really need.
I can see that. Thomas, that's been absolutely brilliant. Thank you ever so much for coming on.
No, absolutely, it was good talking. So